Welcome again, everyone, to the Transform Your Birth podcast. And with me today is lovely Jessica Lee, and she's going to share with us her story. She's a birth worker like I am. She's been called into this space. And often with birth workers, there's a little bit of a calling that happens when we go through the experience of having babies. So I'm really excited to listen to Jess's story today. Thanks for coming, Jess.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to share my story today.
Yeah. So tell me about your children, or just have you got one child?
Just the one at the moment. Yep. She's
Yep.
nearly three. She'll be three in July. So she is an absolute firecracker. She keeps me on my toes.
Three's it's a good age. It's that age of
Yeah.
wilfulness starting to creep in.
Yes.
So Jess, how were you feeling about your pregnancy with her, and what sort of preparation did you do?
Yeah, so my pregnancy, I think I was under a bit of an illusion, like most women with our first babies, is that it's all just going to go perfectly well and, we're good. But I actually had a pretty good pregnancy. I was fairly healthy, nothing major out of the blue. My iron levels, everything was like perfect. And I was planning a home birth. So I was, in the throes of finding the right midwife and, doing all the prep for my birth and making sure that it all kind of went to plan, I guess. So yeah, that kind of, I guess, didn't quite go the way that I wanted it. It was just yeah, a series of things that didn't really need to happen.
Mm.
Yeah.
So did you do any sort of preparation? Actually, I'm curious, why did you have the confidence with your first baby to decide to do it at home?
Oh, that's a good question. I guess I was a paramedic before
Right.
I got pregnant. So I had the medical knowledge. I kind of had the knowledge around birthing babies. And I just, towards the end of my career before I got pregnant, I was starting to question a little bit around the mainstream medical system and particularly maternity care. And I just knew that I wanted to do it in my home. I wanted that, my own environment. I wanted to
Yeah.
be surrounded by who I wanted in the room. I didn't want, beeping machines and all the things just
Mm.
throwing me off. So I felt quite confident in my body as a woman to be able to birth my baby into the world. And so I chose to go with a home birth.
Yeah. Yeah. I get fascinated by this. I hope you
Yeah.
don't mind me going a little bit deeper into this. Why were you so confident? What is it about the way you were raised or how people had talked to you about birth? Or was it purely from your experience training medically?
None of the above, to be quite honest. I wasn't raised in a holistic household. I wasn't raised, my mother had three medical hospital births.
Yeah.
Um, and so I was the first in my family. I have an older sister, she's had babies and all like hospital births. So
Mm.
I was the first to want to go down this path. And it was actually obviously COVID. COVID kind of changed the way I thought about a lot of things.
Yeah.
And it really started to open my eyes to a lot of things just in general, but particularly the medical system. And I wanted to be able to do it the way that I wanted. I didn't
Yeah.
want to be coerced. I didn't want to be pressured. And I had heard stories. I'd heard stories from other women that have had those experiences. And just from the work that I was doing within my business at the time was within the health and wellness space. And I just knew that I knew enough about health for
Yeah.
my body. I knew my body and I knew that it was capable of what I wanted it to do, basically. I'm like, generations of women have been birthing babies, like it's nothing new. It's nothing new to our DNA, our instincts. And so I just really wanted to do it in my own space, on
Mm.
my own terms. And I thought I knew enough, but turns out I didn't really do the preparation that needed to be done.
Mm. Wow. No experience is ever in vain, and ever in vain. I always say this is the path of life, and we wake up to things when we're ready to
Mm,
see them. And I think your comment about COVID was a great example of, I think for many, certainly when I grew up, we were taught, doctors knew everything and you just do what you're told. And it was my own birth experiences that helped me to realize, oh my God, these people are humans. They make mistakes.
yeah.
They are working in the conditions that are not always supportive to people's health and well-being.
Mm,
And it was through my own birth experiences and watching what happens in the medical system as a doula as well that helped me to start to realize that it's so important for us to step up and cultivate the confidence that you seem to innately have in order to bring that into the labour room, because there's so many messages out there telling us that we don't know, we're not enough, trust the medical staff. But COVID certainly taught us that there are a whole lot of agendas in medicine that have nothing to do with us that can play out in any sort of treatment that we are being offered for anything really,
mm,
let alone
yeah,
birth. Yeah. So I think a
yeah.
lot of people woke up to that harsh truth and reality. So tell us about how it unfolded on the day for you.
Yeah, so it actually it actually started when I was around 38, 39 weeks pregnant. And this is quite a common occurrence that I have seen and experienced with other women, is that my blood pressure started to rise towards the end of pregnancy, which is quite normal. It's quite natural, in the physiology of your body when you're pregnant. You've got extra blood volume, there's lots of things happening. And so my blood pressure started to rise, and fair enough, my private midwife wanted to rule out preeclampsia. So she scheduled a hospital visit for me to go and get tested to make sure and rule that out. And I
Yeah.
was okay with that. That's fine. I can work with that. When I entered the system, because obviously I was planning a home birth, so I'm now in the system. I'm now on their radar that I'm pregnant and about to drop. And so I got tested. I didn't have preeclampsia. There was no other issues other than just the slight high blood pressure. Now they were really trying to push for induction
Mhm.
because I had high blood pressure. But with my medical background and just the knowledge around patient care, I'm not a textbook. Okay, we all got textbook versions of how things should be and how we're taught. But you got to look at your patient. You got to ask those historical questions. And for me, my blood pressure had only risen by 10 millimoles of mercury, which
Yeah.
isn't significant. That's pretty much like at the cusp end that you kind of want it to be while you're pregnant, but it wasn't dangerous.
Mm.
For me, normally, my blood pressure used to sit around 135. So it went
Yeah.
up to around 140, 145. That's not dangerous levels of high blood pressure for a pregnant
Mm.
woman when my normal before pregnancy wasn't, low. And
Yeah.
so they really started to push induction when I entered the system. I declined. I had to sign a waiver, medical waiver, that I'm going against their advice. But at that stage, there was no actual medical necessity for it.
Mm.
It was just they didn't want me to turn up on their doorstep if my home birth didn't work out, that kind of thing. So I declined, and they wanted me to come back in every couple of days just to monitor baby. And I was like, that's okay. All right, I'll agree to that. That's fine. We can make
Yeah.
sure everything's all good. So went back in and they did the monitoring for babe, and she was perfectly content. Like there was no issues. I was fine. She was fine. The only thing was that my blood pressure had risen slightly. And in a hospital setting, it did rise a little bit more because naturally you're in a stressed environment. I also had the
Mm.
doctor put the blood pressure cuff on me upside down. So there was just lots of factors happening in that environment. Um, I then ended up getting a call a few days after that day. So coming in for testing again, I got a call to come back in, but I had to come back in alone. And I was like, okay, that's a bit odd. So I came in to the hospital and I was met with not only the doctor, but the head midwife. And again, they were trying to push induction. And I'm sitting there alone as a woman, wasn't allowed to bring a support person. They specifically said that. And they're trying to push induction. And at this rate, there's no medical necessity. Baby is perfectly happy and content. There was nothing, no issues that they flagged with either one of us. And so again, I was confident enough that I declined again, even with the pressure. I had to sign another waiver to say that I'm going against medical advice. So I went home. And throughout all this happening, my midwife has suggested to me to do some stretch and sweeps. She framed it as natural, a natural intervention, just to kind of get the hospital off my back. She's doing her due diligence as far as her, guidelines are taking her. So I'd had a couple of stretch and sweeps throughout this time. It was about 30, I think I was like 39.5, just about 40 weeks when I started feeling some pretty bad back pain. And I was like, what is this? Because I could feel it in my bum. I was like, is this normal? And so that day was just really wacky. Like we had to take my dog to the vet. And so I'm like having contractions in the vet going like, I think I'm actually in labor. Like it was just all unfolding really oddly. And very quickly. So I started having contractions about 1 o'clock. My midwife was actually scheduled to come to me for an appointment that day. So she was already on her way, which was lucky. So by the time she got to me at 4 o'clock, I was already 2 minutes apart with my contractions. And that is quite quick for a first pregnancy. And so I had a lot of back pain because we later found out she was posterior with me, so she wasn't quite in optimal positioning, which is why the labor was quite intense for me. So we set our pool up, we set everything up, it was all good to go. Like my midwife was there, my student midwife was there, and I'm like, wow, this is happening. This is so exciting. I'm gonna like do this and meet my baby. And it just unfolded so quickly. And my midwife suggested that I could get in the pool at some stage. And by this time it was dark. So I think it was about 6 o'clock or something, 7 o'clock at night. I could get in the pool. And she was kind of like saying, do you feel like you could push? I'm like, well, maybe. Like I'm not sure, because at this rate, I have not had a baby before. I'm not sure the feeling that I'm supposed to be feeling. And she went off the purple line on my back and said I was about 8 centimeters dilated. So I'm like, right, we're gearing up, we're getting ready, like we're nearly here. I'm like, this isn't so bad. I'm thinking this isn't so bad. And then I'm not sure what happened in that time. I was a little bit out of it. But my midwife asked me to get out of the pool, and she did a cervical exam, and it turns out I was only 3 centimeters dilated. So straight away, I had lost my mindset. My mindset was gone, because at that point I was like, I'm 8 centimeters. I'm nearly there. Like this, I can do this. And then to be told that you're only 3 centimeters, I'm like, well, I can't do this. Like that's not very far along at all, Like, so that straight away, I just lost control of the situation.
Yeah. Can I come in there, Jess?
Yeah.
That mindset piece is so huge. And it's one of the challenges of either agreeing to or even refusing vaginal examinations is it gets you into this thinking of how much longer do I have to keep going? And to have a sense of, we're well on the way. And particularly when you've got good, strong contractions. And then to be told that can be incredibly disheartening. Now, it sounds like your baby was in a not so good position. When babies are posterior, their little heads don't present as well on the cervix. And typically, a lovely crown presenting, which is the top of the head, will act as a wedge to the cervix and, really support the opening of that door. But when they're rotated, it's more the flat part of their head that can be presenting on the cervix, which can make labour much longer and and even the door opening and closing can sort of be a bit of an issue when you haven't got that optimal sort of presentation. But this is why it's always a good question to ask your carers prior to Labour Day. Under what conditions would you want me to do a vaginal examination? And think really carefully as to whether it is going to support you and work for you or not, because it can be a real mind melting experience if you're not where you think you should be. So that would have been really hard, Jess. How did you overcome that?
To be fair, I didn't. I spiraled. That was the beginning of my spiral. I lost control of my birth after that. Yeah, I lost control of my birth after that point because, like you said, mindset is everything. And when you enter labor, you're in a mindset already. And yes, you can have a little bit of a spiral during that time. But when you're thinking that you're 8 centimeters because your midwife has said so, to then only find out you're only 3, and that was really hard hitting. And I was like, because I was in quite a fair bit of pain. They had already done the spinal injections to help with pain, and I think those were worse than the actual contractions. So they had kind of done all the things that they could to kind of help me get comfortable. And then when I found out I wasn't very far along, I was like, I can't do this. This is, and by then I couldn't get a hold of my breath. I couldn't anchor back into my breath. I wasn't breathing. I was tensing. It was just, I just spiraled out of control with my mind. And so I did labor at home for 6 hours before eventually I made the call that I was like, I need to go to hospital. I need some pain relief. This is like, I can't
Yeah.
keep going with this pain. But at not at one stage did anybody try and get me to move, to try and get baby to move. Even when I entered the hospital, they put the epidural and not one, I laid on my back. I was kept on my back. They put a peanut ball between my legs, but that was about it, I was like, nobody got me out of bed. Nobody tried to, move me in any way to help baby move. So for 12 hours, I was on my back. So I had an epidural, then they've hooked me up to Pitocin, and those two are already working against one another. So I'm like, you got one that's slowing you down, one that's trying to speed it up, and baby's still not in optimal position. So after 12 hours, they basically come to me and they were like, well, C-section is pretty much the next option, because baby, her head was kind of like you mentioned, not in the optimal position. So she was kind of wedged in my pelvis a little bit. So
Yeah.
she would have come out face first
Right.
if I had birthed her. But again, it's just a series of things that, could have been prevented if they were picked up, and if I had have, I guess, made the choice to not stretch and sweep, because that, I think, is what brought on labor that wasn't supposed to progress. I wasn't supposed to go into labor then. So it was just
Yeah.
like the whole thing unraveled on me.
Can I come in there, Jess?
Yeah.
A stretch and sweep will not work unless you're ready to go into labor. So it's important because a stretch and sweep is the sort of messing around with your cervix and pulling at those waters. And it is a form of intervention. You're quite right around that. It is a form of intervention. And in that, it also comes with a mindset of let's bring this labor on. And you had a lot of pressure around your high blood pressure, which for some women like you was a version of a slight elevation and still quite within a normal range. For another woman, it could have quite been putting the baby under a lot of pressure. And with a couple of extra symptoms, it can also be preeclampsia. So you're in a really tricky position when you've got different carers with different ways of thinking about managing the pregnancy and the birth process with a level of safety. Now, one of the challenges we have in birth, particularly when it comes to baby's positioning, is this is not something we can always control. Sometimes we can manage. And I sense for you, Jess, you're quite right about the idea of nobody helped me to try and move this baby and to work with, because it was very obvious very early on your baby was in posterior.
Mm.
And there are a lot of things that midwives can do if they're skilled and experienced in this to help you to adopt different positions that can potentially support the rotation of the baby back into a more optimal presentation to the cervix.
Yeah.
But I think it would be really, I would encourage you and other people not to assume that you could have changed things at any point when once you start to walk down the path, whatever unfolds with whatever decision you make is the path that this birth has had to take. And this is where we learn a lot. And Jess is going to share with us very soon about what she's learned, because she's really been called to explore where her birth could have been supported better, but also you're in a situation that you couldn't have controlled. And I want to just really acknowledge you for going through something like that, in that you made the best decision with the people that you had around you. And as a labouring woman, it's very difficult to push back and to say, no, I don't want that. Or, by this time, your mindset and how that sort of those circumstances, and it was certainly not ill intent that caused it. It was the midwife just misjudging where you were up to, which really sort of threw you out. But you had to sort of go through this. What did, when you look back at that situation, if you could do that again, what would you do differently?
I would decline all intervention, including stretch and sweeps. I
Right?
would literally let birth unfold
Yeah.
as it's supposed to.
Yeah.
That means hands off. Nobody touches me unless I give the okay,
Yeah.
including cervical examinations. There's no research to back those up. Everything. It's just let the body naturally unfold how it is supposed to.
Undisturbed birth.
Yes.
Yeah. And they are the best conditions for women to labour in. Now, the challenge we have, though, as women, is we don't always know what we're bringing into a birth space. We don't know if there are certain tensions around our uterus that's causing the baby to be in posterior. We don't know whether we're bringing in some type of subconscious baggage. We don't know whether we're bringing in an epigenetic historical response to birth through our mothers and our grandmothers. There's so many mysterious things that are coming into the birthing room that are all contributing to the events that unfold, and to what degree remains a mystery.
Yeah.
So the stretch and sweep, how do you think that influenced the way, because many women have stretch and sweep and it doesn't work. But how do you think that influenced you psychologically going into that labour in a negative way? Because you'd say you'd do it differently.
I'm not sure how it influenced me psychologically. Looking back on it, it definitely was the precursor to bringing on labor too early, because that is one of the risk factors of a stretch and sweep, is that it can bring on false labor or labor that stalls. So I definitely, looking back, I think it was a precursor, but I couldn't tell you, I wouldn't remember right now how it actually impacted me psychologically at that point.
Did you feel a pressure to go into labour?
Yeah, there was a lot of pressure, outside pressure from hospital, from my midwife, because as much as, endorsed midwives are amazing and they're so good at what they do, but they do still have guidelines like a hospital to follow. And I was actually quite naive at the time, even though I was APRA registered myself, that I didn't think of that. And I didn't think that even having a midwife, she's still got protocols and procedures she still needs to follow and ask. And so I was quite naive in thinking that I was just putting all my faith and trust into this woman because she was supporting my home birth.
Mm.
But at the end of the day, that's great, but she still had guidelines she had to follow like a hospital.
So what questions would you encourage pregnant women to ask their endorsed independent midwives before, say, going for a home birth or having them as their primary carer?
Mm.
Knowing what you now know, what questions would you ask?
For them to try and find the right one for them is more, I guess, how they're planning, because every woman's different. We all might want a home birth, but we all maybe think different or we
Yeah.
vibe different. So you definitely have to, your energies have to match for one. I feel like you were saying before, what we allow into the room is huge. So your energies have to match.
Yeah.
And also your values, I feel like the values that you both have need to align. There needs to be some sort of commonality there so that everything, you do have trust in that person. You have to have trust in that person
Mm.
because they're there, for a
Yeah,
purpose, there to help you bring your baby into the world. So
100%.
you know, just the questions on I guess asking, whether or not their values do align with what you want, if they're happy to support your birth vision, you know, all of it, like right down to the nitty-gritties of like, do you support me if I say no to XYZ? Do you support me
Mm.
if I want to decline XYZ? Like, you need to know these things because
Yeah.
there are some people, and like you said, we're human. We have our own opinions, our own belief systems.
Mm.
Even though we're trained to do certain things, we still are human with those beliefs.
Yeah.
So you really need to make sure that they
Mm.
are going to be on board with you every step of the way because
Yeah.
if that person in your circle, they're with you through your whole pregnancy, if they're in your circle and they're kind of undermining what you're wanting a little bit or
Mm.
judging or, trying to coerce you to go a different way, then that's just pressure that you don't need. So making
Mm.
sure that you are both on board with what you want for both you and your baby is paramount.
Yeah. And I would like to add to that too, is to ask them the question, what are the protocols that they have to work under?
Mm,
Because the same thing happens wherever you give birth, particularly in our system of regulation. And we do that to try and keep women safe from people who may not be skilled working in this space. But one of the problems with some of the protocols is that protocol might work really well for one woman and could undermine another.
mm,
And having the capacity and the flexibility to take each individual pregnancy and birth as it is, utilizing the protocols in a wise way and recognizing that they're not always the best way forward or the safest way forward.
mm,
What are the protocols that she has to work under to maintain her insurance and all of the different things that go with
mm.
this? Because the birth process in our system doesn't have the luxury of trusting women. It really
Yeah.
doesn't. And I
It does
think it
not
helps to
center
understand that.
women's autonomy. Yeah.
No, that's right. Even though some models are more woman-centered and will include women's choices more readily than others,
Mm,
it's still, even in those situations, there are limitations in the way that they can work. So it does help to know and understand that. So
mm.
tell us about the rest of your birth, Jess, how that unfolded after that.
Yeah, so basically they had scheduled me in for a C-section at this point.
Hmm.
And I actually looked over to my midwife and asked, is this the last call? Like, is there
Mm.
nothing else we can do? And she basically agreed. And so they scheduled me in. So I had my C-section.
Hmm.
I had a lot of pressure still coming at me. There was a lot of pressure from doctors about the vitamin K shot. And obviously, I had gone through all this with my private midwife. I had a book with my private midwife that listed everything I did and didn't want.
Mm.
And the hospital still tried to push me, even though I had written it down. I had, people in my corner saying no. I was actually literally being cut open when I had a student doctor ask me again. And I'm like, I think this was like the second time that I had declined. And I'm like, I'm literally getting cut open on an operating table, and you're trying to push me for something I have already said no to time and time again.
Mm.
And so that was like another thing that just added to the pressure, the outside forces. And so my birth unfolded. I had my baby. She pulled out. She was screaming. They didn't carry my wishes to delay cord clamping. So I think they delayed it for like 30 seconds, cut it, took her away, wiped her down, which I also didn't want. So at this point, there was no reason why they couldn't do either of those things. She was pulled out, she was screaming, so she was breathing. She had full use of her lungs, but they still took her and did the routine that they're so used to doing.
Mm.
And so that was another one of my choices that was taken away from me. And then I was handed this baby, and I felt so disconnected from my body and from my baby at that point. It literally like all hit me at once when I'm holding this tiny little baba while being sewn back up, going, what just happened? Like I was planning this whole other birth experience for 10 months, or 9 months. And
Mm.
all of a sudden, I'm on an operating table. I've been handed this child that doesn't feel like mine because she was just pulled out of me. And so that was kind of the start to really, really, really like hard postpartum for me. I really struggled to wrap my head around the fact that I felt like my body had failed. I felt like my body failed in the one thing it's supposed to do. And it wasn't until obviously learning later and going into all of the education that I have is that it wasn't my body that failed. It was a system that failed me in not helping prepare me optimally, not helping me go through the motion of the change in my direction of birth. I'm just shoved into a hospital system, and nobody gave a second thought to what my mindset was like. Nobody gave a second thought to what my mindset was like once she was out. They just expected that this is it and this is how it goes. Even my own private midwife didn't ask those questions. And I struggled. I was really struggling. And to those who knew me, they were scared. They were afraid for me because I was struggling. Um, and yeah, it was probably borderline postnatal depression. But it took me a really long time to accept the birth that I didn't have, to
Mm.
grieve it. It also took me a really long time with the identity shift into motherhood. I had to let go of the girl that I once was before becoming a mum, and that was really hard too, was letting go of the freedoms that you're so used to having when you don't have a little person to look after or relying on you. So yeah, that was kind of where my birth kind of led me, was to a really hard postpartum as well. So it really gave me a backbone now to make sure that other women don't experience that. Yeah.
Mm. What did you learn about yourself as a result of going through that?
Oh, that I am resilient. Yeah, that we are resilient. Absolutely. Like we can bounce back from just about anything. Um, yeah, our minds are a very powerful thing,
Mm.
and they have the power to destroy you or redeem you.
Mm.
And I chose the latter. So I chose to put my pain into purpose. Yeah. So,
Mm.
and it's been a long journey. Obviously, I had struggled with some mental health issues throughout my early 20s as well. So there was kind of a precursor there for me anyway. But since having my daughter, I've done a lot of work into myself, a lot of the inner work, a lot of work with my mindset and NLP and trauma work. And it's really helped me discover a lot about myself as a person, as well as who I want to be as a mum and a woman and a wife. And yeah, so she has become my purpose. She's become my why for why I do this, because as a girl, as a daughter, she's going to have her own day one day, and I don't want her to ever feel ashamed or embarrassed or alone or cut off from anybody because of how things just unfold in life.
Mm. Mm. We're never quite sure where birth's going to take us,
Mm,
and it is a ride. And sometimes the most difficult rides teach us the most. And that's my sense with your story, Jess, is you came in with this really strong um, desire for autonomy and for you to see what you could do. And your birth took you in a totally different direction through no fault of your own, but just a series of circumstances that unfolded. But what it invites us to do is to do the work, because that's what being a mother um, is all about. And by work, I mean the inner work.
mm,
The unfolding of the woman to the mother is a very potent time, and birth acts as a catalyst for that to happen.
mm,
And sometimes we think, oh, I want an empowered birth, and we want a vaginal birth in water, and we want the harp music in the corner and the angels descend from the heavens, and all, and we can have very, very high ideals
mm,
around how we want to be and what the journey we want the journey to be. And then life shows us something totally different.
yeah.
So as you look back at the events that unfolded, and I loved how you really owned I chose to be recreated as a result of this, not diminished.
Mm.
If you looked back, what were the greatest lessons? Not so much in choices and things, because I think we've looked at that, but what has this invited you to become as a mother as a result of this experience?
Oh, it has actually really transformed me. Obviously, my postpartum period was the catalyst for me in how I experienced postpartum rage and a lot of big emotions that I was never taught how to deal with.
Yeah.
And so that's when I went on to do the inner work. I went on because I was like, I deserve better than this. She deserves better than this. There has
Mm.
to be better than this. And so that's where I started my self-development journey and doing the inner work and the inner healing. And so the biggest lesson for me is it has turned me into the mum that I never thought I would be. Like, I'd never really imagined it to be fair. Like when you are a little girl or you're younger and you're looking ahead going, what kind of mum, what can you envision as yourself as a mum? You never think about the emotional aspect. You never think, you just kind of see the outside of like, I want to take them to do these things and I want to be this kind of mum and I want to do all the, fandangled things.
Like a puppy dog in the handbag.
Yeah. But you never look at the emotional. What are you going to be
No.
like with your emotions as a mum? Are you, and this is quite a new age thing because this was not something that was around when I was younger. My parents didn't know any of this sort of stuff about nervous system regulation and emotional intelligence and learning to deal with big emotions. So it's quite a new thing that's come about, but it's been the biggest lesson for me in that I have become a woman and a mother that I could never have imagined. And I'm not perfect by all means. I still have my days. Like it is really hard, even though you have all the tools and all the knowledge to be able to do the things, to put it into practice in the moment. It can be really tough. And so I really just want to put that out there that you can have all the tools and still have an off day. You can still, you
Pause.
know, there's no shame in it. There's no shame in losing your patience. There's no shame in having a day because we are human. And
Mm.
as women, there's so much to our emotions. There's so much depth to us as women to hold our own emotions and regulate ourselves, because we're constantly changing throughout the month. We run off that monthly cycle where our hormones are always up and down, so our moods are always up and down, and so we're ebbing and flowing throughout the month. So giving yourself grace when you do lose your patience, when you do have a moment where you feel so much shame. There is no shame in it, because you are human. And the best thing that you can do as a mother is to own it. Don't ignore it. Own it with your child. Come back and apologize and say, this was not your fault. Mummy was just having a hard time with her emotions. Because that humanizes the experience to them, that they're not the only one that has big emotions they can't deal with. And so that's been the biggest lesson for me as a mum, is being able to take that responsibility, and having done that work has led me to be able to do that.
This is, I'm smiling here because there's an incredible amount of, well, what would I say? Is it grace or serendipity or something about the experience that you had, which brought you fully and completely into the mother you're destined to be as a result of having a really difficult, set of circumstances that unfolded in a perfect storm that took you from, I'm going to do it myself, I'm going to go down this path, and then ultimately you needed help to get that baby out of you. And whether that help was ideal or not, it was the help that you got, and you got the baby, and that's all wonderful. But if you were to, I've asked other women this, and it can be a powerful question. I hope you're okay with this. But if you were to be, say, your fairy godmother that sits on your shoulder, and she knows what you need to learn in this lifetime, and she looks at you as the paramedic who's delved into the medical system and can see its intrinsic weaknesses and all of that, and say, right now, I've got to turn Jessica from a woman into a mother. What type of birth should I give her? Do you think she might have given you the birth you got?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
nothing is ever in vain.
No.
And I love Jessica's story for that very reason, because we can hear her story and go, oh, that was awful. They didn't respect her wishes at the Caesar, and they didn't try and help to move that baby. And they messed around with her mind by telling her how many, that miscuing her around her dilation and all of those unfortunate set of things that happen. But in the end, that invited you, as you just said so beautifully, to own it and to be made as a result of it rather than let it take you down. You made a conscious choice when you had a shitty postpartum period as well to go, right, never again. I'm going to own this. I'm going to do the work. I'm going to rise above it and beyond it. Had you have had the, water birth, vaginal birth in your home with the candles and the, beautiful music, you may not have got the power of the story that you're sharing with us here today. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I definitely think that everything that we are handed in life is given to us because we can handle it, but it's how we choose to show up in the
Yeah.
face of
And
it.
transform as a result of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because your mindset, like I said, can either keep you stuck
Mm,
or it can help you grow. It's
yeah.
just how you look at it.
Yeah. Well
Mm.
done, Jessica, for doing the work that you've done with this particular birth story. What advice would you give a pregnant woman?
Oh, just one. Oh, the advice that I would give a pregnant woman is to start now on the inner work.
Mm,
That would be the biggest thing, is that anybody can teach you positions, anybody can teach you about labor, anybody can teach you about the physiology of birth. What most people can't teach you is the mindset behind it all, the mindset behind becoming the mother, the mindset on how you deal with how things unfold. That is the biggest thing. And it is 90% of labor is mindset. And same as motherhood, 90% is all mindset. It's how you choose to show up, how you choose to respond, how you choose to overcome certain patterns and certain beliefs and certain identities that you formed. It is the backbone of who you are and who you're going to become. So do the inner work now. There is never enough time to do it.
Wow. The episode before this episode, Shelby's episode, we got into this terrain as well. She had 3 babies and she had 2 challenging births for different reasons. And then for baby number 3, she comes in and she does the inner work and she can see what a difference it made. And she started to become aware of the impact of her mother's birth and other sort of ways of being that she had been bringing into those previous births. And it sounds like you've discovered the same thing. I think what Jessica has shared with us today, very, very wise words, is to recognize that we are not a piece of meat or a walking uterus giving birth. We are far more than that. We have a nervous system, we have memories, we have a wiring of response under certain conditions where we can get triggered and have identities and ideals and things like that that can play out. When what this time of your life is offering you is the opportunity to use birth as a catalyst for growth and transformation and coming into a much bigger part of yourself as the mother. So I love that this podcast is having some of those deeper conversations now, because that's what parenting involves. We have to grow up, not just our children, we have to grow up. And that's why birth is the way it is. It's mysterious, it's intense, it can be bloody awful sometimes, or it can be absolutely amazing and even orgasmic. It doesn't matter the type of birth, it's what gets activated within the mother and the people close to her. So I hope this episode has been really helpful for you today, and I would encourage you all to walk away with some of the wisdom here, but also at the end of the day to believe that, your body is wired to do this. Even when it needs help, it's still doing it. So thanks for listening, and we'll see you again next time. Bye for now.